Kia ora koutou katoa, it's Mrs. Goodson here, and this video is lesson 10 for level 1 science about genetic variation. And we are going to cover in this video the introduction to patterns of inheritance and just make sure that we've got all the key terms and the vocab that we need to talk about patterns and understanding patterns of inheritance. So we are going to define homozygous, heterozygous, dominant, and recessive. And we talk about pure breeding and its role in artificial selection. So when we're talking about patterns of inheritance, we must acknowledge one of the early scientists who made a huge contribution to understanding patterns of inheritance, which was Gregor Mendel. So he was a Augustinian monk in the Czech Republic. And he studied pea plants, and he studied about 10,000 plants. And he found some traits that are dominant and would always be expressed in a first generation cross when he was breeding the plants, and others are recessive and would not appear until the next generation. So we acknowledge Gregor Mendel. Key terms, definitions you need to know for this topic. Dominant is an allele that is always expressed regardless of what the other allele is. Recessive is an allele which is only expressed in the offspring if the dominant allele is absent. It is masked by the dominant allele. Homozygous means having two identical alleles. So homo means the same, and zygous refers to genes. So if an organism has two of the same gene, remember you've got two copies because you've got one from each parent, either homozygous dominant or homozygous recessive, then you've got two of the same gene, and that is used for pure breeding. Heterozygous means having two different alleles for a particular gene. And so just pause the video and take a moment to fill in the gaps on this. So I'll wait for you to pause the video. And humans have 23 pairs of chromosomes in every cell. Each pair of chromosomes contains genes inherited from the mother and genes inherited from the father. Genes occur in pairs, and they coding for the same characteristics. So two genes control eye color, and different forms of the same gene are called alleles. So a dominant allele is represented with a capital letter. For example, if we were using the letter B, it would be capital B, and the recessive allele with the same lowercase letter, for example, lowercase b. Alleles, a dominant allele will always show if present. It will show if the organism has a pair of genes, the same, two big B's or big B, little b. The gene that is dominant masks or hides the effect of the recessive gene. So you can carry the recessive gene and not show it if you're heterozygous. Recessive allele only shows when both the recessive alleles are present. So if the organism is showing the recessive phenotype, then they must be homozygous recessive. So phenotype is just going over these words. Phenotype means the physical appearance or the physical expression of the gene. So for example, if we're talking about hair color, it would be brown hair would be the phenotype, and the genotype is the two alleles that you have. So there's only three versions of the genotype: heterozygous or homozygous. Punnett squares can be used to work out the probability of a characteristic being passed on to the next generation. And so we're going to look at Punnett squares in a future video. The term pure breeding refers to when in artificial selection, so when humans are breeding, like a farmer or a dog breeder or something like that, is breeding plants or animals, they want to produce offspring with known characteristics. So they want homozygous organisms, living things, animals or plants, either two big B's or two little b's, and so that when crossing or when breeding a purebred animal with another purebred animals, they know which traits they're going to get. So this video has been about defining some key terms related to patterns of inheritance: homozygous, heterozygous, dominant, and recessive, and also talk about pure breeding and its role in artificial selection.